Invocation, thank you. For our invocation, I would ask that we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. I'm going to ask Councilwoman Muller to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4 is the consent agenda. Is there any part of the consent agenda any council person wishes to remove?
I'm going to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Number 5, presentation to the city council by members of the public according to the rules set forth in the agenda. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? If not, we'll move to item 6, discuss and take action on a permission to assign interest to allow Resource Management to assign their TX CDBG contract 7219081 to GrantWorks, Inc., and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Howdy Glisonby, City Manager. As many of you may know, Mr. Charles Edwards has been serving our community very well over the years through his company, Resource Management. They are grant administrators, and so many of the state agencies that have grant programs usually will require the applicant or the city to have a grant administrator. And so the city has used Resource Management for a number of years to great success. We currently have a grant open with the Texas Department of Agriculture that Mr. Edwards and his team are the administrators of. He recently had an opportunity to merge with GrantWorks and combine their two companies. And so this is simply allowing us to assign that contract to Resource Management to GrantWorks. Charles will still be the one that manages our account and helps us. He'll just be doing it through the name of GrantWorks rather than Resource Management. And so staff is requesting approval of this request so that we can cross our T's and dot our I's and keep moving forward on that project.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
I move that we grant permission to assign the interest to allow Resource Management to assign their TX CDBG contract 7219081 to GrantWorks, Inc., and authorize the city manager to execute all related documents.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 7, discuss and take action on FY21 street improvement projects, Washington Street reconstruction project.
Mayor, Council, this is somewhat of an interesting conversation. Mainly what I want to do tonight, not necessarily take any action, but just get some of your feedback and your thoughts on how we want to proceed on this capital project. One of the 4 streets that we're going to be working on is Washington Street, starting at Live Oak and going all the way south to Culver. This is a full reconstruction of that street. As part of that process, we're looking and evaluating at the underground utilities that are underneath Washington Street. The last thing we want to do is put brand new asphalt down and then immediately cut it up and start fixing pipes that are underneath the ground. A complicating factor is that Washington Street is incredibly narrow and there's not much right-of-way, so all the utilities are under the street. There's really no room to put the utilities behind the curb. When we started this process, one of our engineers had initially done some design work for the utilities under Washington. At that point, it was several years ago, they said that that scope of work was expected to be about $400,000. As you know, we're looking to spend around $1.7 million to reconstruct Washington. So I thought a $400,000 budget from a couple of years ago is probably a $500,000 budget, based on kind of what my anticipated growth in those costs would be. So I asked the engineers to give me a cost estimate to amend their contract to allow for the design of the utilities. They have submitted that amendment with a fee, and they're asking for $200,000. The design contract for the streets is for $200,000. They're asking for another $200,000 to design the utilities underneath the street, at which point I pushed back and said, no. If the project is expected to be $500,000 of construction, I'm not spending $200,000 in engineering fees. That's not reasonable. Their response was, it's not $500,000 worth of work, it's about $1.5 million worth of work. If it's $1.5 million worth of work, $200,000 is a reasonable engineering fee. I just don't have $1.5 million right now to spend on the utilities under Washington. And so we've got a couple of options to consider as we move forward. I wanted to kind of put those on the table and get your thoughts and your feedback to see how we want to move forward. One option is to finish the design of Washington Street, do the reconstruction, and not do any work on the underground utilities. That's the cheapest option, but it also presents the greatest amount of risk. When you do a resurface of a street, there's not as much heavy equipment. You're kind of scraping off the top layer of asphalt, putting some new asphalt down. It's not very disruptive to things below the ground. This project is actually a reconstruction, not a resurfacing, which means we're going to take off the top layer of the street. We're actually going to remove quite a bit of the base, and we're going to rework the base and build it from the ground up. That means there's a lot of heavy equipment, and some of that equipment is vibrating. And so when you have that equipment just a couple of feet over the top of a buried water line, I can guarantee you it's going to bust leaks up and down that water line. And so option A being do the street and leave the utilities alone guarantees that we're going to be popping leaks once the street's finished, which means I can guarantee you be cutting it open as soon as we finish putting it down. That's not a very attractive option and not a good use of taxpayer money. Second option would be just do some spot utility replacements. Find areas of the utility that are more at risk and just replace those portions. That is a reduced scope of construction work. However, you still have to do most of the design to accomplish that, and you still run a risk of popping leaks in the areas that you don't work on. The third option, option C, I guess it would be, is full utility replacement. Do the street, do all the utilities. The project goes from a $1.7 million budget to a little over $3 million to do Washington Street. And we'll have to find some funding for that in the coming CIP year. The final option is just don't do Washington Street. Leave it alone and go pick a different street to do. I'm not fond of that option either because there's a lot of traffic that travels down Washington. It is a thoroughfare to access downtown and the Live Oak area. So options 1 and 4 are, in my opinion, not great options. So then we either have a partial utility replacement or a full utility replacement. I've had a number of conversations with the engineers. Their recommendation at this point is go ahead and do all of the design for the utility work, and then when we bid it out, see what the costs are, and then do whatever portion of that work we can fund. There's not any great options on this project because we have, and I'll say this and then I'll open for questions and comments. We can come up with the $1.5 million of funding in the utility fund for this project next year. It just means I'm not spending that $1.5 million somewhere else in the utility that may need it. And so we're going to have to reshuffle some of our capital plan if we're going to do this utilities. But I would really like some of your thoughts, your questions, your feedback as we decide how to move this project forward.
So what was your options of, where you would go and find the money?
For our capital improvement plan, next year for the utility, we had planned on issuing some certificates of obligation for some work within the utility that needs to be done. We were looking to spend that money in other parts of the utility, some of that being at the water treatment plant. We've got the rehab project that's about to get started. There's some other little things we need to do at the treatment plant. There's just lots of needs within our utility, and so we were gonna issue certificates next year to fund some of those projects. We were planning to look at $1 million, $1.5 million in issuance. If we do that work plus this, that's a $3 million issue. We can do that, but there are other things that we're not doing in that regard. And so Washington Street needs to be replaced. If we do Washington Street, we really need to do the utilities underneath it. It's a waste of taxpayer monies to do the street and not work on the utilities. It just requires some reshuffling of funding and priorities.
What's our risk that we would have by doing with some of those projects that we had in the utilities?
I would say there's no great risk. What I'm looking at is, we've had this conversation, we're probably 3 to 4 years away from that wave of real population getting out into our area of the county, which means we need to have the capacity to produce water and serve water to a growing population, which means there's some work at the water treatment plant that needs to be done to add capacity to that plant. There's some small projects that we can do to make that happen. I was wanting to start that process next year. We'd basically punt it a year, and we would start that process a year later on the timeline. We're okay if we punt that a year, but I really don't like punting things if we don't have to. But we're either punting that or we're punting Washington, and at this point, I think Washington's a critical project. But I just wanted everything out on the table and for us to be talking about this before we consider a contract amendment.
Heidi, I know that you talked about using cameras and looking through the lines and seeing the areas that that show up, and there's no guarantee. What is the possibility of looking prior to the scraping?
Yeah.
And then you do the second stage, taking it down and scoping again? Is that going to give us a good picture, or still a lot of risk?
The camera and the scoping is for the sewer line
Right.
that's underneath Washington. Most of that line is 8 feet or deeper below the street. And so when the heavy street equipment is doing their work, that equipment doesn't really impact the sewer line as much. What you're worried about there is sewer line that has collapsed or sewer line that is no longer at grade. And if sewer's not flowing well, you want to fix those sections. We could replace Washington without replacing the sewer lines, and there's not a whole lot of risk there. It's the water lines that are the most at risk for this construction project, and you can't camera a water line. And most of these water lines are 50 years old or more.
And how old are the sewer lines?
50 to 60 years old, yeah. If we go in and do the utilities, knock on fake wood, you're not gonna have to touch those utilities again for 15 to 20 years. But if you don't touch them and you redo the street, I can guarantee you we're gonna have a lot of projects cutting that street open. So it's just a matter of this street project is getting incrementally more expensive, and I want y'all to be aware of that at every stage of this conversation.
What does this do for the timeline?
If we were not doing utilities, we could probably start doing street work this fall. If we're gonna redo the utility work, that means we're probably not starting any construction until the spring of '23. Adds about 6 months to the construction schedule, because we've got to do the design work. We'll have the design work finished before the calendar year's up, but you typically don't do street work in the winter. So you're probably not seeing any street construction till the spring of next year.
And does it extend it even farther then?
You're probably looking at 6 to 9 months of construction time. So if you just start that in the fall, if we punt it 6 months till we start, your completion is probably another 6 months out.
Will there be some of the other streets that we have budgeted for that are not going to be total reconstruction started before?
What we're talking with the engineers about is we can do Park Street, we can do Hickory Street, and we can do the crack seal on Monroe. If we package those three as into one contract, we can probably do those this fall and do Washington in the spring as two separate construction contracts. I just want to make sure y'all are comfortable with how the project is growing in scope and cost before I keep moving this thing forward.
Well, in my opinion, whatever we do, we need to do it the right way and not turn around and, I mean, even if we have to delay it now or delay it a couple of years, whatever it takes, is do it right from the beginning so that we're not coming back again and again and patching something that we just spent $1.5 million on.
And you said it's one of the major thoroughfares, so let's do it right so we don't have to put people around on other streets
I would agree.
in the future.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. We will.
You do not want action, right?
There's no required action, but in order for us to have a discussion, a dialogue, it had to be a full agenda item. I will say that we're going to ask for a special council meeting on May 3rd. I'll tell you why in a little bit later, but we got several contracts and projects to make some approvals on, and several of these projects are time sensitive. And so we'll be asking for a special meeting on May 3rd. At that meeting, we'll take action on this contract amendment as well as the filter projects at the water treatment plant. But I'll get to that later on in the agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Item 8, discuss and take action on the purchase of real property located at 1104 O'Neill Street in Commerce, also known as S4380 Original Town of Commerce, Block 80A, Lot 6, and authorizing the city manager to execute all appropriate documents.
Mayor, Council, one of the capital projects that we have in front of us is the expansion and upgrading of our animal shelter, which is over on O'Neill Street. In order to accomplish this project, there is a property that is adjacent to our animal shelter that is privately owned. Some years ago, it was held by the city on a tax deed. It was sold. There's a private real estate company that owns it now. So if we can acquire that property, it makes our animal shelter expansion much more feasible. We can do it on the lot we have, but it'll be really tight and really compressed. And so reached out to the owners of this lot, discussed what their plans were. They had some plans to develop it. They didn't have much detail, but the fact remains it's right next to an existing animal shelter and it backs to a railroad. So there may not be a whole lot of development you can do with it. And so we talked through what they were asking for the lot. And so we've made a preliminary offer of $37,500 for the lot. They've accepted that and provided a purchase contract. And so I advised them that I needed to get approval from the city council before we move this project forward. And so it is our recommendation to go ahead and approve the purchase of the land. We have money for the animal shelter project outside of our construction budget. So purchasing this land will not reduce the construction budget for the animal shelter. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
I move that we purchase the land 1104 O'Neill Street in Commerce, also known as S4380, Original Town of Commerce, Block 80A, Lot C, and authorize the city manager to execute all appropriate contracts and documentation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 9, public hearing and consideration of a request by Michael White R4U Ventures LLC for approval of a replat of Lot 4 Original Town of Commerce. And I refer you to the agenda for a detailed description of the property. And at 6:20, I call a public hearing open. Is there a person wishing to speak to it?
Mayor, Council, I'll introduce the item and then we can open the mic. This is a variance request that is a replat. We've got an existing lot that the developer wants to plat into 2 lots, so he can put 2 structures on this existing lot. It is zoned A2, so there are lot dimensions that are required. In order for him to get 2 properties out of this, it does require a variance to the width of the lot that is in zone A2. And so it's a minor difference. It's not off by a whole lot. And so we took this before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They did approve the replat with the variance. And so we're bringing it to City Council to ask for your consideration. Staff recommends approval of the replat. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone else want to speak at this public hearing? If not, I'll close it at 6:21. Is there a motion related to this agenda item?
Make a motion to approve the replat.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, discuss and consider all matters incident and related to the issuance and sale of City of Commerce, Texas Combination Tax and Revenue Certificates of Obligation, Series 2022, including the adoption of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of such certificates and approving all other matters related thereto.
Mayor, Council, Jorge Delgado with Hilltop Securities. Good to be here, back in the City of Commerce again. You may recall, let me walk you through some positive results that we got this morning on city's certificates of obligation sale, competitive sale. Quick refresher, back in February of February 15th, we were in front of you. You approved the funds finance along with a notice of intent to go ahead and move forward with certificates of obligation series 2022 to fund a couple different projects. We're funding, city's funding street and sidewalk improvements, and I'm on slide 3. I need to move it here. Street, sidewalk improvements, park improvements, municipal facilities, water and wastewater treatment plant repairs, and that's just a high level. I'll defer to any of the specifics to Mr. Listenby who wants to expand on those. Now, street, sidewalks, parks, municipal facilities are going to be funded for a total of $6 million on your tax side, and the water, wastewater treatment plant, that's your phase 2 of, which is funded at a total of $1.75 million out of your water and wastewater fund. The plan you approved back in February was to fund the tax supported items within your existing tax rate. You know, we've been working around that plan, and the goal here is that we will not have an impact to your current tax rate based on this issuance. That goal has been met. The second goal was that we're going to fund your water and wastewater treatment plant repairs with no impact to your existing budget on your water and wastewater fund. That is still the case. Your 2021 numbers in your water and wastewater fund came in very healthy. There would be plenty of cash flow after paying for your existing debt and this new issuance on your water fund. So that's still the case here. So we got working with your finance director and city manager on securing a rating. You did get an affirmation from Standard & Poor's at your A+ rating. Not only did you get an affirmation, but you proactively, your city staff proactively implemented and worked with us on some debt and financial policies, which you implemented in a prior council meeting. Standard & Poor's recognized that, and they increased what they call their viewers of the city's financial management from adequate to good. You know, they had us inadequate because We didn't have those policies in place. And that's a very good step of laying the groundwork. You know, we always push them to get a higher rating. You know, this is one of those where we can put in some upward pressure for the city's rating. Now, an A+ is a great rating. You're an investment grade community. And, but we're laying the groundwork for some upward pressure, and congratulations on that. You know, having secured the rating, we publish all of the documents and ask all of the investing world, we need to take bids on April 19th at 10 a.m. Central. You got a total of 6 bids today. BOK Financial Securities is going to be your low bid, 3.37% true interest cost. You got a total of 6 bids, which is a great participation. It's a good showing. All of these are very strong names in the industry. They have participated in, a number of these have participated in the commerce bond sales before. BOK was number 2 last time. The Baker Group was number 1 last time. You know, these two have been competing for your bonds. That's what we want to see. Baird has won commerce paper before. And, you know, we were telling your finance officer this morning, we want to see these competing against each other because that drives your cost of borrowing there. BOK coming in today. Now, we did move in interest rates a little bit from, you know, actually quite, you know, some movement between February and now. You got the invasion of Ukraine between, you got inflation, you got supply chain management issues. However, this is the market, and this is an efficient rate. We're meeting the goals that you set forth back in February, which is stay within the budget, fund your capital improvement programs for this year, and lock in an efficient bid, which, as your financial advisor, we recommend you lock in BOK's bid. Should we bid this out today, we actually move 10 basis points higher. That's around noonish. Should we bid this out tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we'll be looking at 3.47. Things are moving. So we got in, we took a 45-day notice of intent period, we got in, and we got an efficient bid from our perspective. So, Mayor, Council, if you have any questions, we would be closing on May 17th, at which point we would have the funds in the city's hands. Any questions? Happy to answer those.
Any questions? Sounds good.
Thank you.
We thank you.
Mayor, Council, we recommend approval.
I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Commerce, Texas combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2022, and approving all other matters related thereto.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 11, first reading, discussion and possible action on the adoption of an ordinance amending Appendix C, fees, rates, and charges of the City of Commerce Code of Ordinances fee schedule, and providing the effective date.
Mayor, Council, this has been somewhat of a labor of love for your staff. We have an ordinance that is intended to cover all of the fees and charges that the city levies against our citizens and our visitors. And we recognize that there are many sections of that fee ordinance that were outdated, haven't been touched, and maybe not even reflect on current practice. And so we went through all of this ordinance and provided some updates. And so this amendment is intended to clean up a lot of those fee structures, and then there are some changes. The copy you were given is a red line, so you can see a lot of red ink. It caused me a little bit of trauma, flashback to college and all the red ink that my papers received, but we pulled through. But I want to make just a couple of highlights, and then we'll answer your questions. On the utility fee, we changed a lot of the cosmetics in the structure and the layout, but some of the major increases, or not really major, but increases we're talking about, one of them is what's called a manifold. We have a number of developments going in that are multifamily duplex in nature, and so what that requires then is kind of one meter pit with multiple meters in it. And so if your tap fee is for one tap, that traditionally only covers 1 meter, but what we're seeing is one water tap and then 3 or 4 meters in the pit. And so we've got a manifold tap fee that allows for those multiple meters in 1 meter pit, and the costs that we had in the ordinance didn't cover the costs of all the meters that we're putting in the ground. And so we did increase the cost of a manifold installation on the utility side. Parks and Recreation, we removed some activities that we don't currently have and we don't envision in the near future. For example, swim team. If we get to the point where we can reintroduce a swim program, we can add that back in. But we also removed the city gym from the rental list. Based on feedback from our liability insurance provider and the inspection they did on the current city gym, they did not remove coverage from us yet, but they strongly recommended that we consider stop using it because it's old and it's not safe. And so we've removed it, and we're no longer making the city gym available as a rental. We will use it from time to time in select occasions, but it's not on the public rental list. Building and development fees from community development. When someone has an application for a zoning change, we've moved from 200 to 250. There's a lot of notices that have to go out. There's a lot of staff time involved, and we wanted that fee to cover staff time and effort. Building permits for single-family, two-family remodel, fire damage, and repairs. The rate was listed at 45 cents per square foot. That's outside of the range of cities in our region and our size, and we felt like that was an unreasonably high permit fee for small remodel projects, and so we've made some changes to that. Miscellaneous fees. We no longer offer citizens to get an ordinance book. That's kind of an old one that's been on there for a long time. If you want a hard copy ordinance book, it's really expensive and it's really cumbersome, and you can get it online for free. And so we're no longer offering to sell hard copy ordinance books. Solid waste, we no longer sell trash bags. For a long time, the city had a program where we sold trash bags. But that required us to stock inventory and manage sales, and we really feel like we're not in the retail business. There's plenty of places in town you can go to buy trash bags. You don't need to get those from the city. And finally, at the animal shelter, the euthanasia fee that we charged no longer covered our cost of material and labor, and so we made an adjustment to the fee for euthanasia. There's a lot of other changes. Many of them are structural and cosmetic in nature, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there a motion?
I move that we accept this on the first reading.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 12, City Manager's Report.
Mayor, Council, there was no public comment, and so I will turn this over to Ms. Jamie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this evening, we're going to start off with the hotel occupancy tax applications. They are now going to be available for anybody to pick up at the front desk, and we will make them available on our website. I'll do my best to get them online tomorrow, if not by Friday. They are going to be due back on Thursday, May 5th. For you guys to hear their presentations in time for City Council on the 17th. They are the same applications that we have been using for the past few years. Organization's name, that kind of stuff, your description, why you need the funds, how many funds, how much funds you're asking for. I have sent out reminders to certain organizations that have yet to request their funding. And so I also want to say that if your form is not submitted complete, that I will be turning it into council as is. Usually if it's not complete, I try to call and ask, hey, what is, it's not complete, but this year I think that, based on how your feelings on the hotel tax forms, I will turn them in as is. So any questions on the hotel tax forms or any statements?
Who hasn't picked up their money?
Well, since it's on a reimbursement basis, I have found that some people, the museum, I contacted them and they said they wanted to wait until closer till September, and they want to turn in all of their receipts towards the end of the year, so that they're not making multiple requests.
How much did that student?
They haven't requested any funds yet this year. The chamber has not requested any funds, and they did not request any of their funds last year.
Also, one of the things that we're going to be looking at, and we're providing notice to the agencies that typically submit applications, we will continue to look and make sure that they comply with the state law requirements.
Yes.
It's called the Texas two-step, I guess. There's
Yes, and
the-
we,
there's-
that printout, you guys are very familiar with the printout, the Texas two-step. It will be a part of the application. I always attach it with the application so that they have it, they can read over it, they can read through it.
Could you highlight a few things on that?
I can if you would like me to. I think I know which ones you're talking about.
Number one,
Number one.
well,
heads
Heads
and
and
beds.
beds.
and there are, and it's I think it's a valid point of conversation. There are entities within the community that don't generate heads and beds, but they do generate sales tax. And so we may need to look at an alternate program other than hotel occupancy tax, because I'm very hesitant to violate state law. And so if there's other ways that we can use sales tax to help those organizations, that may be a better program than hotel occupancy tax.
Agreed.
And I think our city attorney likes the fact that we're hesitant to violate state law.
Jamie, typically you give us an amount that, do we have that amount yet, or would that be on the 5th?
When they do their presentations in May, I'll have a slide that shows you guys our fund balance and how
Okay.
it's been fluctuating, and I'll let you know what you guys have been giving each entity over the past few years, and what you guys gave them last year compared to what they're requesting. So when they present in May, then I'll give you all of that information.
Okay.
I didn't want to get ahead of myself, because I'm not sure who will be requesting, and I didn't want anybody to feel like I would be leaving anybody out in case we had anybody new feel like they wanted to go out for funds. Okay. As Jorge was talking, we did get our rating, so I wanted to give you a copy of the actual rating report that we did receive, and just notate that Howdy and I are no longer adequate. It's a long-standing joke for us. But we did, even though our rating is staying at an A+, we are seeing an upward trend. And a lot of it has to do with our socioeconomic things that we can't control. But the things that we could control was our financial policies, which you guys did pass, and so I do appreciate that. And us just moving forward on the things that we can control. And so that was, they recognized it, and that was good for us. So I do appreciate that. So moving into our property tax. So our property tax revenue, as of March, we have received $3.25 million in revenue, which is 96% of our overall budget. And you'll see a slight difference between our INS and our M&O. M&O, we've received 97% of our M&O, but only 95% of our INS. That's because I budget our INS slightly higher, so that I am stating that we're going to be able to make our debt payments, right? So I budget slightly higher on the INS side. But we've received overall average of 96%. And so delinquent taxes we're still kind of holding steady. We still receive a little bit every month, which is nice. We still receive a nice steady flow of all those penalties and interest. But overall, everybody has paid their big chunks in January and February, so we'll slowly start seeing this increase, and hopefully we'll hit that budget dollar. I will say on the preliminary tax rolls, we should be getting those for next budget year next week. And Howdy and I were able to attend the appraisals meeting where they just kind of talked about what people's valuations were going to do, and it was very interesting. And if they do ever have a meeting like that, I would encourage our citizens to attend. It was very informative as a taxpayer myself. It was very informative to go to. It was very interesting. I thought it was wonderful to attend. So I would say if they ever have one of those again, please go and attend. So moving on to our financial summary as of February. So these are our financial statements for the general fund. So as of February, we've hit 42% of our fiscal year. So we're almost to 50% of our year. Overall, we are over budget on our revenue side and under budget on our expenses. If anybody has any questions specifically related to a revenue or a department, I can answer those questions for you on the general fund before we move on. So in the public utilities, again, we're seeing the same trend. So we are over budget on our revenues, and we are under budget on our expenses. And again, on the water production, that's just because we're still waiting for that balance out of that Cooper Lake.
Sabine River?
Sabine River.
It's Waukene.
Lake, yeah, the Sabine River, the one, Upper Trinity that we use.
Oh, that's
Guess
Cooper.
I'm thinking of vacation over at Cooper Lake.
That's Cooper Lake.
Yeah. And so, since we pay it at the very beginning of the year and it's such a large amount, it just takes a long time for it to kind of fizzle out. But it's very close. So, any questions on public utilities financial statement? Wonderful. All right, so this just gives you another look of our financial statement on the general fund and where we're kind of balancing out on graph form. We're doing really well. Our departments are doing really well managing their budgets. Our department heads are on the ball with everything. They're really wonderful. And so, same thing on public utility side. And then we're moving into sales tax. So I didn't have our sales tax for last month, but I did get it Friday of last week. And so I know it's not in your packets and you probably haven't had a chance to review it. But for sales tax, we are slightly above budget and we are slightly above where we were for last year. We have received $837,000 in revenue so far this year. Thank you, Molly. Again, retail trade is our driving force. And accommodation and food services, again, we're seeing this upward trend. We're seeing it grow. We're seeing it move. Definitely over where we were last year, but still higher than we were pre-COVID, which is amazing. Manufacturing continues to grow, and I think that we'll continue to see that grow as we see our community development grow. So there we go, sorry. Retail trade, we do see a slight dip on the online sales, but it seems to be following the same trend every year. So every year we kind of see it dip down in April, and that's probably after everybody's spent all of their money for the holidays, and then everybody needs to take a break from spending, and then it'll pick back up hopefully in May. Any questions on sales tax, property tax, Again, accommodation and food services. The main one is going to be your cafeterias and your grill buffets. I can't tell you necessarily who those are, or who they aren't, but I know who they are. But they're doing really well. Our small businesses are doing really well. And we're seeing that trend. We're seeing new businesses succeeding. And it's really encouraging. You know, we're seeing that growth, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see it. So, any questions? All right. I think that's it. All right.
Tractor Supply with the concert today.
Ms. Molly, calendar of upcoming events?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have a few special events for you. I'm going to let Miss Becky Thompson introduce you to our silent auction and market event this month.
This is a real exciting time. If those that have not been to the silent auction, it is a great fundraiser for the Children's Museum, but it's also a really big social for the citizens of Commerce. So we have not been able to have it for 2 years due to COVID, and we are bringing it back this year. It will be this coming Monday, the 25th, at the Sound Rayburn Student Center, and it will start at 6 o'clock, and it will end at 8. It is silent. It is a silent bidding. We'll have, so you can go through all the things. We'll be stopping tables at different times. There's food, drink there, and we hope to see everyone out there. It's really it's a big social event for Commerce.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. The City of Commerce Police Department is participating in our biannual National Drug Take-Back event. I wanted to read to you part of this press release related to the event because I think it's important to note. You're all pretty familiar with this event. We've been participating, or at least our police department has been participating in this since April of 2019. The prescription drug take-back event will happen at the Commerce Police Department in partnership with the Drug Enforcement Administration in the 22nd National Prescription Take-Back event. This will occur on Saturday, April 30th from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. The National Prescription Drug Take-Back event is aimed at providing a safe, convenient, and effective means to dispose of unused, unwanted, and expired prescription medications. The majority of teenagers experimenting or abusing prescription drugs get them from their home medicine cabinet, a family member's unused prescription, or a friend who has gotten them in the same manner. Unused prescription drugs discarded in the trash can be retrieved and abused or illegally sold on the street. Prescription medications discarded in the household trash can contaminate the soil, and additionally, prescription medications flushed down the toilet or washed down the drain can contaminate our water supply. Proper disposal of unused prescription drugs saves lives and protects our environment. The 21st National Prescription Drug Take-Back event that occurred in October of 2021 collected 744,000 pounds of approximately 372 tons of prescription medications. Of that, the City of Commerce contributed approximately 77 pounds of medications, and that was again during our last event in October of 2021. In addition to the semi-annual take-back event, the Commerce Police Department offers a secure collection drop box, which is available to our citizens and the public 24 hours a day at the Commerce Police Department. You can walk into the lobby, and there's a secure mailbox there where you can dispose of your unused or unwanted prescription or over-the-counter drugs. So if you can't partake in this event from 10 to 2 on Saturday, April 30th, you can drop by and leave those meds there at any time. It is that time of year for the Commerce Farmers Market. It'll start this year on May 7th, which is, of course, is a Saturday, and will occur every Saturday from May 7th through September 24th. It begins at 8 a.m., and of course, the location is still at 1100 Bonham Alley. So we hope that you all will take part in that. The Hunt County is doing a tire roundup. I left you all a flyer here for this. That's going to take place on Saturday, May 14th. It'll be from 8 a.m. to noon at the Hunt County Fairgrounds, which is on Jack Finney Boulevard. There's a few rules. You can't have tires on the rims. It's for Hunt County residents only. You do have to provide proof of residency. You can't have more than 25 tires per person. No tires so large that they cannot be manually unloaded. And this is not for commercial businesses. It's only for residential residents of Hunt County. So bring those code enforcement violations to the Hunt County Fairgrounds on May 14th from 8 to 2. And then finally, Commerce Community Action, CCAP is joining forces with our Commerce Police Department to host a benefit golf tournament. This is going to support community outreach efforts, and this will take place on May 25th at Webb Hill Country Club. You can register 4 people per team for a cost of $300, which includes lunch. There's trophies for first, second, and third place teams. Should you like to register a team to participate in the golf tournament, you can contact Sergeant Wallace of the Commerce Police Department or call our dispatch number at 903-886-1139. You have to be registered by May 1st to participate in this event, which again is May 25th. That's all I have.
Thank you. Not a lot to update on the personnel side. We've been trying to get a building inspector recruited and on the team for a while now, and we continue to be unsuccessful. We're reaching the point where I don't know that we're going to be able to get a licensed building inspector that already has all of their certifications to come to Commerce. So we're going to kind of go back to the drawing board and look for someone with relevant experience that may not have the certifications yet, and then hire them and train them, which would mean we'll have our own building inspector and Bureau Veritas working together for a period of time while we're working on getting somebody with the proper certifications. And so we're still trying to move that forward. We just have not been successful at finding a candidate. Project updates. Before I get into the spreadsheet, a couple of meetings ago, y'all approved the purchase of a mini excavator for our utility crew. And we had initially looked to buy a tractor, and the manufacturer of the tractor started raising the price and delaying the delivery time. And so the vendor for the mini excavator didn't raise the price, but they delayed the delivery by another year. And we need that equipment sooner than that. And so we've actually found a source to get 2 used mini excavators, cheaper than it was going to cost to get one brand new mini excavator, and they will be available quickly. And so we're under budget, but I just wanted you to know that we're not buying one excavator like we talked to you about. We're buying 2. They're used, and so we have a maintenance plan on them, but we're coming in under budget, and that actually improves the utility crew's ability to stay on top of work. I'll try to move quickly through our project list. The animal shelter project has been awarded. The design has already started. Chief and I and some staff are actually going to go tomorrow, road trip, look at some various animal shelters in the region to get some ideas of what we like and what we don't like. And as we discussed earlier in the meeting, we are purchasing the land next door, which will improve our options and how we can deliver that project. We still feel like we'll be able to do some groundbreaking this summer for construction on the animal shelter. And so hopefully you'll continue to hear positive updates on that. Park and Recreation, the public library project continues to be under design. We've received all the geotechnical and topographical reports, and design is progressing. I have a meeting with them on Friday to review the design progress. Playground improvements, that contract has been awarded. Materials have been ordered. Construction will begin this summer. We do expect both of those playground projects to be installed before the summer has concluded. We expect kids to get to play on those this summer. Splash pad.
Excuse me.
All right, I didn't think that was me, but we're awake, so that's good. On Friday, we have our final design meeting on the splash pad. We're at 90% design of that project. And so we're going to review it with the engineering construction team on Friday. Assuming we give the thumbs up on everything, they expect to break ground the last week of April or the first week of May to start construction on the splash pad. So we'll start seeing progress on that project move pretty quickly as well. Downtown Improvements Project, the master plan has started. We have a meeting with an advisory committee on Friday to kind of keep moving that design process forward. Again, the idea is to create a master plan of who we want to be when we grow up, and then we can start investing some of our money in areas that help make that a reality, some of which would be improvements to the parking lot and the farmers market area. We'll have some spot repairs to sidewalks for ADA reasons, and then continue to look at improving our green spaces downtown. So there's a lot of work coming for downtown. Not so great news. We had a grant application for our 2022 comprehensive plan. We found out last week that our grant application was disqualified. And what that means is, doesn't matter whether we scored well or not, they just kicked us out of consideration. And so the reason for that is on the back side of this project page. But as you'll recall, the city has had a grant project at Lake Tawakoni for the Raw Water Motor Control Center. That project's been hanging over our heads for a number of years, and we're actually on our second grant extension for that grant. And the way the state manages grant applications is if you have a grant that's active that is not in compliance, they don't let you apply for new grants. And so until we are able to finish the Raw Water Motor Control Center, we don't get to submit grants for anything. So no fire truck grants, no downtown sidewalk grants, no home grants. It's not a great time to write grants in Commerce, Texas. But the good news is, once we finish that raw water project, that gets lifted and we can start applying for grants next year. Airport Fuel Farm, I still have not bid that project out. Pricing is still incredibly high, but as I've said many times, we're going to have to bid that out. Got all my water projects going successfully, and so I think I've got the point where I can do that. Street and drainage projects, we discussed that earlier in the meeting. Street design is at 60% complete for design, but we're starting utility design, and so that means we're going to be punting construction out to some degree. I expect we'll have some construction this fall and some construction in the spring, but we'll continue to update on that. And the infamous Raw Water Motor Control Center. The contractor has been selected, that project has been started, and this project is the gift that keeps on giving. As you know, the grant extension that we have received from Texas Department of Agriculture has a hard deadline of December 31st of this calendar year. And the instructions from the grant agency is that if you don't have this money spent by December, we're taking all the money back and you don't get anything. Now that we have the contractor on site and we're working on the project, this is predominantly an electrical construction project. So we're looking at electrical system components. There are one or two pieces of this project that the supplier says those pieces aren't available until January of 2023. Our construction deadline is December of 2022. And so what we're working with the Department of Agriculture on is there are components of this project that we can build and that we can move, and we can have their money spent before December. We just may not have all of our money spent before December. They keep repeatedly telling us, you've got to spend our money before December. We can do that. Will we be finished with the project? It depends on if the supplier can get us this part before January, and we don't know the answer to that. And so we're continuing to work with the Department of Agriculture to see what our options are. There is still some degree of risk with this project, but we're at the mercy of the suppliers of electrical components. If you'll recall, a couple of Februarys ago, Texas had a major electrical problem across the entire state. It just so happens that everybody in the state is looking for the same electrical components as we are, and they're hard to get. Moving on quickly, the water treatment plant filter, we bid that project out. We had 2 bids received last week. One of the bids was within our budget, and so we're requesting a special meeting on May 3rd so that we can consider approval of that construction contract. Again, one of the reasons being, there are components to these projects that take a really long time to get here, and the faster we get the contract awarded, the faster we can order the parts. And it's 2 weeks. I'm asking for a special meeting on the 3rd instead of waiting for the 17th. 2 weeks is a big difference when you're ordering some of these materials because it's availability and it's price. We want to order some of this stuff faster if we can, and so that's the purpose for the special meeting. But we did get a bid that was within budget, and that project's ready to move forward. Wastewater treatment plant pump station is under construction. They'll be wrapping up in the very near future, and so we'll have something to inform you on. And the final one is the enforcement from the state, the SEP, or the Supplemental Environmental Project. It's sitting on somebody's desk in Austin. We gave them exactly what they told us to give them. They said if we gave them this, it would be approved. It's still sitting on somebody's desk in Austin, and we can't get anybody to say that's good. But the project at the wastewater treatment plant pumps is the work that we proposed to supplement this environmental project. I still anticipate that'll get approved, and we won't have to spend any money on that enforcement action. So that concludes the project updates. Mayor, Council, do y'all have any questions about those projects? We have a lot of work going on right now. Most of it positive. There's some of them that make my hair turn gray. But I haven't caught up with our mayor yet, and so I'm hopeful that we'll be okay. That concludes the city manager's report, and Mayor, I believe we do have items for executive session.
We will meet in executive session under the portion of the law 551.0711, 551.0712, and also 551.072 on another matter. Is there a motion related to an executive session?
I move to executive session.
Who won? All in favor? Say
Aye.
Any opposed? We will adjourn to executive session.
It's 7:02.
And exactly at 7:03.
Oh, 7:03, all right, okay. Duly noted. It's at 10.
Who needs to be there?
If you and Becky can be here, that would be helpful. You don't have to be.
Okay.
At 7:13, I call this regular session back in session. I think all we need to do is set a date for the next meeting.
Yeah, and so if we don't feel like we can have a quorum on May the 3rd, we can wait until the 17th, or we can look at an alternate date. And so,
Let's look for an alternate date. Earlier.
Earlier?
Earlier.
all right,
I will be out April the 26th until sometime the 3rd or 4th. So earlier, like next day or two would be fine.
Can you make it?
It'll need to be at least 3 days.
Three
I've got to have
days. Yeah,
72
I was
hours
gonna
of
say we
posting.
gotta
Yeah.
3
And,
days.
and so if we posted tomorrow, we couldn't meet until Saturday or Sunday. Well, we're not going to have a weekend meeting, so,
You're gonna the first week of May, complete first week of May?
First week. And so, and
I mean, we'll
I'm
still be
going to.
gaining a week if we did it the week of the 9th, or,
I don't know that a week gains me enough to justify a special meeting, unless you really want Mayor Williams to have 2 formal meetings in May as his ride off into the sunset.
I like to see him.
That is not a problem.
Waiting till the 17th is okay. It doesn't kill anything. It just, my preference was to move quick, but if we won't have a quorum, there's no point.
But can we do it next week?
Yeah,
On the
what-
25th?
What's wrong with next week?
Yeah, I mean, can you make it?
Will we have a quorum on the 26th?
26th, I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Okay.
Will you be here?
Then
I'm here any day.
we'll,
Okay, so we can get a quorum then.
we'll set a meeting for the 26th,
Okay.
and we'll do it there.
That'll work.
Okay.
Anything else? If not, at 7:15, this meeting is adjourned.
Friday at 10 here at City Hall.